Hi, pre-algebra students. Welcome to week 7. So we're talking about volume of prisms and cylinders. Volume is the amount of space inside a three-dimensional figure. It's measured in cubic units. And the first one we're going to talk about is a rectangular prism. So a rectangular prism, you'll see you have length, width, and height, and basically what you do is you just multiply all of those together. So you multiply the three numbers they give you together. No real specifications there. You don't have to worry about what you classify as the length, the width, and the height. You just multiply them together. So I'll call this the length, the height, and the width, and I'm going to multiply them all together. So 3 times 2 times 5. So that's going to give me 30 meters cubed. All right, looking at the next one, I'll call this the height, I'll call this the length, and this the width. So length times width times height. Multiply all of those together, and I believe it gives me 200. Check it in my calculator. So 5 times 4 times 10. Yep, 200 centimeters cubed, because you're multiplying three numbers together. Right, 2 is my height, this can be my length, this can be my width. Really, honestly, it doesn't matter because you're just multiplying them all together. 3 times 6 times 2 is going to give me 36 feet cubed. Okay, so that's for a rectangular prism, so everything's a rectangle. The next one is a triangular prism, and the reason why it's called a triangular prism is because of the fact that you've got a triangle as one of your bases. So right here, it's usually the one that's facing you, that's the triangle. So in this figure, it matters what you're going to call the base, the height, and the length. Okay, and you have to multiply by 1/2 because it's the triangle. So the height is how tall it is from top to bottom, so basically the height of the triangle. The base is the base of the triangle, the bottom here of the triangle, and the length is what we call the distance between the two triangles. See how you have a triangle in the front and a triangle in the back? So it's the distance between, triangle back here, it's the distance between those two triangles. Basically, you're multiplying the three numbers together and multiplying by 1/2. So my height here is 4, my base is 6, and then the distance between the bases, this is my length, this is 12. I don't use the 5 at all, so the 5 is actually a distractor. The 5 is the length of this line, but that's not any of my figures. So volume is 1/2 length times width times height. So it's 1/2 12 times, or it's not length times width times height, excuse me, it's 1/2 base times height times length. Don't want to confuse us. So 1/2 my base, which is 6, times my height, which is 4, times my length, which is 12. So I'm going to go through and multiply all of that in my calculator. So instead of 1/2, I'm going to do 0.5. So 0.5 times 6 times 4 times 12 gives me 144. So this is 144 meters cubed. All right, over here on my next triangle, so I'm not going to use the 13 at all. That's the distractor. My height is the 12. My base is the 5. And then the distance between my length is the 4. So the formula is 1/2. I believe it's height, base times height, times the length. So 1/2 5 times 12 times 4. So go on my calculator, 0.5 times 5 times 12 times 4. Gives me 120 centimeters cubed. All right, and then the last figure is a cylinder. Okay, so for the cylinder, you have pi, which is 3.14. Okay, just as a heads up, the radius, and then the height here. Okay, the radius and the height. And usually the height ends up actually being on the outside of our figure. So pi r squared h. So volume is pi r squared h. So 3.14 times radius here is 4, so 4 squared times the h, which is 12. Okay, so if I show that on our computer calculators here, I would probably end up doing 3.14 times 4 squared times 12. So 3.14 times 4, remember this is our squared button, squared times 12. And you can see it up there. 3.14 times 4 squared times 12 is 602.88. So that is 602.88 centimeters squared. All right, going on with the next one. My height is the distance between the two circles. So the height is the distance between the two circles. So that's 6. My diameter is 9. So my radius is half of 9. So 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. So volume equals pi r squared h. So 3.14 times 4.5 squared times h, which is 6. So come back up to my calculator, clear all of this out. So 3.14 times 4.5, and then hit that squared button, times whatever my height was, which was 6. Gives me 381.51. So 381.51 inches squared. All right, last 3 problems is working backwards. So when they give you a rectangular prism, remember the volume for a rectangular prism is length times width times height. This is the easiest one they can give you. So my height here is what I'm missing. Okay, I'm missing the height. I know my length is 5 and my width is 14. So if I plug everything I know into the formula, this one is 210 equals 5 times 14 times, I don't know what h is. So first thing I'm going to do is do the 5 times the 14. So I'll do it right in my calculator. That gives me 70. And that's what I'm going to divide the 210 by to get h by itself. Okay, so divide the 210 by 70 and I get 3. Okay, so height is 3 centimeters. Okay, so that's the easiest one. This is a cylinder. So a cylinder, okay, is volume equals pi r squared h. They gave me the r is 9. They gave me the volume to plug in. So 254 equals 3.14 times 9 squared h. So what I need to do is I have to multiply 3.14 times 9 squared and then divide it to the other side. So if I look here in my calculator, clear all this out, 3.14 times 9, and remember this is my squared button, gives me 254.34. Okay, so this is 254 equals 254.34h. And then you divide both sides by the 254.34. Okay, so I can go in my calculator. It's 254 divided by 254.34 gives me 0.9986666. Basically, it's 1. Okay, so it's just about 1. The height is 1 meter. I'm going to round it. And I can check that too. 3.14 times 1 squared times 9 squared times 1 gives me pretty darn close to what it is. If you want to write it out as a decimal, you can write it out as a decimal, and you could do like 0.998, what was it as a decimal? 6, you can write it out that way if you want. All right, and then the last one, since this is a triangular prism, we have to use the triangular prism formula, which is volume equals 1/2 base times height times the length. So I don't know my base, I know my height is 6 and the length is 10. And the volume I can plug in. So 150 equals 1/2 times B I don't know, but I know the height is 6 and I know the length is 10. So what I'm going to do is multiply the numbers I know, 1/2, 6, and 10 together. 0.5 times 6 times 10, and that's what I'm going to divide to both sides. So 150 equals 30B, and that means I'm going to divide 30 by both sides. It's going to give me that my answer is 5. So B is 5 centimeters. Okay, so basically your steps are that you're going to be multiplying the numbers you do know together and dividing the volume by that. The only tricky part here is that you have to worry about the squared here with the volume of your cylinder, and you have to worry about the 1/2 with the volume of the triangular prism. All right, I will see you guys in our team chat.